Hello student, this is my sixth lecture on topic 2 reproduction in lower and higher animals. Clear? In this recording I will explain you the two subtopics of that chapter. First one is puberty or sexual maturity in female. See, you must have already studied the puberty or the sexual maturity in male. So the definition of puberty or sexual maturity remains same, that it is the stage or the age of an organism where the reproductive system becomes functional and start producing the gametes. Okay, now in the human female, the puberty starts at the age of 10 and it's a range 10 to 14 years. Now, in human female, it is characterized by the onset of menstrual cycle, which is called as menarche. Now, in this menstrual cycle, there is a cyclical changes taking place in the reproductive system of the female. Now, this cycle stops when a female reaches around 45 to 50 years, and that phase is called as a menopause. Now, this period from menarche to menopause is considered as a reproductive age of female, which also almost 35 to 40 years ka rehta hai. Clear? Now, during the menopause, the female is unable to bear the child naturally. Nowadays, you find many artificial methods through which they are able to conceive, but naturally they cannot because the cycle gets stopped. And this menstrual cycle is controlled by gonadotrophic hormone. This hormone is secreted by the pituitary gland, and the hormones are FSH and LH, that is follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Now we'll see what is menstrual cycle and how it takes place and how it can be characterized. Now, menstrual cycle is also called as ovarian cycle, student. Now, it is a characteristic feature of all primates, which includes monkey, apes, as well as the human beings. Now, it involves cyclical changes which are taking place in ovary as well as in the uterus. Now, if you remember the diagram, student, this is the diagram of the entire reproductive tract. Now, here is the ovary and then that is a uterus. Ovary releases egg, fertilization takes place here in the ampulla, and then the embryo get implanted in the uterus and get the nourishment and the full development in the uterus. Right? So there are changes which are taking place in each phase here as well as here during the menstrual cycle. Now, what those changes are? Clear? Now, this cycle is repeated. The cycle is repeated with the periodicity of approximate 28 days. Again, these days are variable, student, female to female. Some may have 26-day cycle, some may have 30-day cycle, some may have 24-day cycle, some may have 22-day cycle. So, depending upon the female, but here while explaining, they have taken 28-day cycle. This will help you. Now, these cycles are regulated by hormone which are secreted by the pituitary called as a gonadotrophic hormone, and the another hormone which is secreted by the follicles called as the ovarian hormones. Clear? Now, mid of every cycle, you will find the egg is released out from the ovary in each cycle alternately. Then, suppose in the first cycle, it releases out from this ovary. In the next cycle, it will release out from the another ovary. So, alternately, they goes on releasing the ovules. Right? Now, this is an ovary diagram. You see, we will see in the cycle how this primordial follicle changes and develops into a mature follicle, and then it releases the ova. After releasing the ova, the remains of the follicle, this is actually the remains of the follicle, how it gets converted into a corpus luteum and then corpus albicans in the next explanation. So, just keep the diagram in the mind, that will help you in understanding. Now, see, the entire cycle is divided into 4 phases, student. The first stage of the cycle is called as a menstrual phase, which is the beginning of the cycle, and then with the next stage called the proliferative stage or follicular phase, then it leads to the ovulatory phase, and then the last one is a secretory or luteal phase. Here the terms tells you now what is menstrual phase. This is the first phase. It starts with the bleeding. It starts with the bleeding in the female The first day is called as when the bleeding start, that day is considered as the first day, and it lasts for 5 days. Right now, during these the phase, why actually the bleeding start? Because the decrease in the level of the gonadotropin hormone and ovarian hormone, the endometrium breaks down, and when the endometrium is breaking down, it has a blood vessel, it has a mucus, it has a lining, plus the unfertilized egg. All this is thrown out along with the blood through the vagina, and since it is thrown out and the endometrium is breaking down, it is also called as a weeping of uterus. It is also called as a weeping of uterus for the loss of ovum, or funeral of unfertilized egg. Now the blood, when it is coming out, it is in the form of the liquid. It does not get clotted due to the one enzyme present in it called as a fibrinolysin. Student, 1 marks question can be asked on these phases. Remember that. Okay. Now again, these days of the bleeding is variable female to female. Now when the bleeding is taking place, the entire uterus gets washed off, and the endometrium lining becomes thin, approximate 1 mm. See here, 1 mm endometrium becomes. Now what is endometrium? Again I'll show you the diagram, student. Here, see, this is the endometrium. So thin out हो जाता है ये, clear, and fresh हो जाता है, फिर नया development start होता है. Okay, it leads to the second phase. Second phase क्या है? Proliferative phase बोलते हैं जिसको formation phase, और follicular phase. Follicular phase, what are follicles? Follicles are these which are present in the ovary containing the ova. So ये follicle development start होता है, and ovulation development start होता है किधर? इधर. Now ये actually इधर से ही start हो जाता है menstruation से. Menstruation हुआ, endometrium wash off हो गया, तो क्या होता है? इट प्रोजेस्टेरॉन लेवल लेस हो जाता है, तो इट स्टिमुलेट द एफएसएच. एफएसएच है फॉलिकल स्टिमुलेटिंग हार्मोन, व्हिच स्टार्ट सिक्रीटिंग फ्रॉम दिस फर्स्ट फेज, मेंस्ट्रुअल फेज से, एंड इट इफेक्ट हियर. सो प्राइमोर्डियल फॉलिकल स्टार्ट डेवलपिंग इनटू द सेकेंडरी फॉलिकल्स. नाउ अगेन दे कंटिन्यू इन द नेक्स्ट फेज, एंड द फेज लास्ट फ्रॉम 5 to 13 days. Here actually those follicle which are started developing, secondary follicle, they continuously grow toward the final product, that is a Graafian follicle or mature follicle. There are many follicles which takes part in development, but only one follicle gets converted into a mature follicle called as a Graafian follicles. The rest all secondary follicle degenerate, and the process of degeneration is called as a atresia. That process is called as atresia. Clear? Now the secondary follicle starts secreting another hormone, because they are becoming layer. Follicle क्या होता है? सब स्टूडेंट, ये oocyte है. oocyte के अराउंड द follicle, ओवरी के जो सेल्स है ना, वो लेयर बनाते हैं, follicles. सेकेंडरी है तो 2 लेयर होगा, राइट? एंड these cells are acting as a glandular cells, and they start secreting estrogen. Which hormone? They start secreting estrogen, और अंदर इसके oocyte है. Which oocyte? The secondary oocyte. Okay, now this estrogen secretion helps in regeneration of endometrial cells, glandular cells, development of the blood vessel in the endometrium. Okay, so the thickening of the endometrium increases and it becomes 3 to 5 mm. Clear? Now the next phase, which comes in the mid of, on the 14th day, if you are taking 28-day cycle, so midday is it's a shortest phase, student. Here suddenly the luteinizing hormone increases, and this hormone induces the rupturing of the mature follicle, and when the follicle is ruptured, it releases out the secondary oocyte, which is in the pelvic cavity of the female, and it is taken up by the fimbriae of the infundibulum or fallopian tube, and it enters into the fallopian tube. What? The oocyte enters there, but the remains of the follicle gets converted into another structure called as corpus luteum. Clear? Now this stage is generally accompanied by mild or severe pain in the lower abdomen. Now ovule release हो गया, fimbriae ने ले लिया. Clear? Now so follicle का remain, that goes to the next phase called as a secretory phase or luteal phase. Now secretory phase means it starts secreting something. Right? What? It starts secreting something? The follicular remains. Here ovule निकल गया, इसका ovum निकल गया, ovulate हो गया, तो ये जो बचा हुआ है ये क्या बन जाता है? कॉर्पस ल्यूटियम, एंड स्टार्ट सिक्रीटिंग 3 hormones. What are those 3 hormones, student? प्रोजेस्ट्रॉन, ईस्ट्रोजीन एंड इनहिबिन. प्रोजेस्ट्रॉन क्या करेगा? प्रोजेस्ट्रॉन हेल्प करेगा प्रेगनेंसी को, इट हेल्प्स करेगा इम्प्लांटेशन को, फर्टिलाइज्ड एग को. क्लियर? एंड इट हेल्प करेगा और ईस्ट्रोजिन भी एंड प्रोजेस्टेरोन दोनों. ईस्ट्रोजिन काय को हेल्प करेगा? एंडोमेट्रियम को डेवलप करने के लिए. एंडोमेट्रियम थिक से और थिक होता जाएगा, ब्लड वेसल्स डेवलप होंगे, राइट. एंड प्रोजेस्टेरोन हेल्प करेगा फर्टिलाइज्ड एग को इम्प्लांट होने के लिए यूटेरस में. क्लियर? नाउ द स्ट्रक्चर आफ्टर फॉलिकल्स, द व्हाट रिमेन्स, एक्चुअली फॉलिकल में से एग निकल गया तो जो रिमेन होता है विच इज कॉल्ड एज अ कॉर्पस ल्यूटियम एंड दे सिक्रीट दी 3 हॉर्मोन्स. क्लियर? नो सपोज ओवम इज रिलीज, फर्टिलाइज्ड हो जाता है 24 आवर्स में, फर्टिलाइजेशन शुड टेक्स प्लेस. इफ इट गेट फर्टिलाइज्ड, प्रोजेस्टेरोन प्लेज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल. Estrogen helps in implanting the embryo. Estrogen helps actually preparing the endometrium so that the implantation should be easy and nice. Inhibin stop the secretion of FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, because अभी उसका जरूरत नहीं है follicle development का, अभी embryo development का जरूरत है. तो these 2 hormones all 3 plays very important. It stops secretion of FSH. Now the next part is, if suppose the fertilization is not taking place, ovule is not getting fertilized, so the corpus luteum remains for 2 weeks and then it start degenerating, and when it degenerate it remains in the form of a white scar and it is referred as a corpus albicans, और उसका सिक्रीशन खत्म हो जाता है. सिक्रीशन प्रोजेस्टेरोन, ईस्ट्रोजिन सबका खत्म हो जाएगा. जैसे ही सिक्रीशन खत्म होगा, एंडोमेट्रियम ब्रेक्स होगा और नेक्स्ट साइकिल स्टार्ट हो जाएगा. यदि फर्टिलाइजेशन हुआ तो ईस्ट्रोजिन एंडोमेट्रियम को थिक करेगा एंड द थिकनिंग रीचेस टू 8 to 10 mm. क्लियर? एंड फर्टिलाइज्ड हो गया तो एम्ब्रियो जो है, फर्टिलाइज्ड एम्ब्रियो, इट स्टार्ट सिक्रेटिंग अनदर हार्मोन कॉल्ड एज H, स्मॉल h, कैपिटल C, कैपिटल G, दैट इज कॉल्ड द ह्यूमन कोरियोनिक गोनाडोट्रोपिन हार्मोन. नाउ दिस हार्मोन एक्सटेंड द लाइफ ऑफ द कॉर्पस ल्यूटियम एंड कॉर्पस ल्यूटियम कंटिन्यू सिक्रेटिंग दिस हार्मोन एंड हेल्प्स इन द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ द एम्ब्रियो. I hope that you have it understood. Now I will show you the diagram which comes in the exam, student. And it is a short diagram of this where you can see the 4 phases on menses, follicular phase and secretory phase, and this is the mid of the cycle where the ovulation takes place. And in the diagram you have a 4 phases, 1, 2, 3 and 4 phases this side, and here you show the changes which are taking place in the endometrium. See, endometrium is reducing, coming to the 0 here, 1 mm here, and then that increases till here the secretory phase. जैसे secretory phase होता है और मोटा हो जाता है ये. Okay, now next is the ovarian hormone. Estrogen and progesterone and estrogen is lower. Progesterone is very very low here because it is secreted by the follicular cells. कॉर्पस ल्यूटियम. तो कॉर्पस ल्यूटियम इधर बना नहीं है, इधर बनेगा. ईस्ट्रोजिन सिक्रेट होता है बिकॉज फॉलिकल डेवलप हो गया है तो उससे थोड़ा हाई लेवल होता है एंड ओव्यूलेशन पीरियड में वो पीक पे होता है. प्रोजेस्टेरोन बाद में पीक पे आता है. ना ओव्यूलेशन के टाइम पे ल्यूटिनाइजिंग हार्मोन प्लेज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. सी इट इज हाईएस्ट एंड दिस इज ओव्यूलेटेड follicle or Graafian follicle which is releasing the secondary ooze side. Now here see the follicles, how the follicles are developing. Primordial follicle, then primary follicle, secondary follicle, Graafian follicle and this ovulated. उसके बाद वो corpus luteum बनता है and थोड़ा रहता है फिर corpus albicans बन जाता है. Clear? This is follicular ovarian cycle. Now next one is here gonadotropin which is secreted by the pituitary gland. FSH initially कम रहता है, follicle में थोड़ा बढ़ता है फिर ये छोटा हो जाता है. Okay, now luteinizing hormone suddenly either shoot up hota hai and it induces the rupturing of Graafian follicle. I hope that you have it understood, student. If not, read the NCERT book which is giving you a very simplified explanation. If at all you have any doubt, I will be starting very soon the online session on Zoom. I'm learning that, and once I start I will interact you directly, and so before interaction you read all the topics which I'm teaching you through the videos. Thank you.